Well, good morning, everybody, and I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be on stage with the Congressman because I've never met him before, but I know we have two things in common. We're both Democrats, and secondly, we're both big proponents of telework. Now, I know you spend a lot of time in private industry, which is where I spent all my time in private industry. So I'm on the outside of the government tent looking in, and as an outsider, I often feel the frustration that things sometimes happen faster in the private sector than they do in government. And I have a couple of questions for you that will give you the opportunity, hopefully, to walk me off that ledge and explain, where we are and where we're heading, and a couple of key areas. Okay, you co-sponsored the telework bill, and thanks to your continued efforts, we now have the Telework Enhancement Act that the President signed in December last year. And but apart from agencies specifically, USPTO, GSA, and USDA, I'm aware, because of my position, at Intel and seeing what people are buying, that lots and lots of agencies continue to buy desktop computers. And if you've ever looked at a desktop computer, it's a form factor many, many times bigger than a notebook. And unless you're the Incredible Hulk, you can't telework with a desktop computer. Now we have a law. How is that many, many agencies, to them it's business as usual? Let's just keep buying desktops. Any ideas?
Well, I think with respect to telework, first of all, you're right. I mean, in the private sector, frankly, we're way ahead of the public sector when it comes to telework. For example, companies like AT&T, about a third of the workforce teleworks routinely. It's encouraged, it's embedded in the culture. And in the federal government, we're looking at maybe more like 7% of the workforce. And, I faced the traffic in the city today, and all I could think of from, the Memorial Bridge to here was, we need a lot more telework in Washington,
right.
D.C. And, but it's a cultural change. You got a lot of managers who still in their head think that if I can't see you, you're at home watching soap operas and washing the dog. You're not doing productive things. So trying to change that mindset and resources within the workplace that facilitate telework is going to be, a bit of a shift. The good news is John Barry, who's the head of OPM, he gets it. He's a champion. He doesn't need to be persuaded. And that's really the first time we've had aggressive leadership at OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, strongly encouraging federal agencies to get with the program. But when we look at the fact that 47% of the existing federal workforce is eligible for retirement within the next 6 to 7 years, we have a recruitment and retention challenge. And the next generation of federal employees is going to come to absolutely expect that telework is part of the offering. And so federal managers need to get with it. We passed that bill to try to facilitate that, to reward it, but we have a long way to go.
Thank you. Yeah, a long way to go. I agree. It's almost been a year, and I've not seen, I don't know why, I just had a feeling there would be a sea change. I guess it is. It's naive of me to think that the bill got passed on the 9th, so on the 10th, everyone gets issued a shiny laptop and goes home to work.
Right.
It wouldn't happen that fast in private sector and in the public sector. Clearly, it's going to take a while. You mentioned the attract, recruit, retain. That's going to be a huge problem for this government moving forward because Intel, Google, IBM, VMware, HP, where they're at these colleges alongside the GSA stand, we're after the exact same people that you're after. I mean, we're basically in competition to try and hire America's brightest and best. And if we see one of our advantages is waving the telework flag, it's like, would you like a sexy laptop? And work in a sexy office, and if you work at Google, you can slide down fireman poles and do all that kind of stuff. We're not that hip at Intel, but
I've yet to meet a federal agency that has that fire pole, but I'll take the idea of that.
Okay, take it under advisement. Okay.
No, it's a very real challenge, and by the way, it's complicated by the I think reckless rhetoric of some politicians who see a short-term political advantage in disparaging both the federal worker and the federal workplace. It's a far cry from John Kennedy's call to serve your country. When you disparage an entire workforce, it makes it even that much harder to try to persuade young people that actually a career in federal service is a noble calling and can be quite fulfilling.
Nicely put. These, I have to say, these seats are a little funky. I feel like I'm in Barbarella with Jane Fonda. Yeah. She's going to come whizzing past on one of those sail
I was looking
ships.
for Twiggy.
Twiggy, yes, very good. Nice reference. Thank you. About 3 years ago, when I was working on the telework campaign from an Intel marketing perspective, trying to get the word out there, this word COOP came up on my radar. And I quickly realized COOP stands for Continuity of Operations Program, and it's the same way that somebody who lives on the San Andreas Fault should have a backpack with all of those emergency things by the door today, not tomorrow, but today. And it's the same way that when an agency has a mysterious white powder or somebody tries to blow up a building. How will that agency carry on the work, whatever job they're doing for the country? And it struck me that the tool that you give today's federal worker is a laptop instead of a desktop, so they can now be a secure mobile worker. They can work from Starbucks, from home, from a hotel, from a shelter. Preparing an agency for COOP is the same darn thing.
Yes.
Give them mobile tools, so that your human capital is dispersed. I mean, it sounds a little heartless, but dispersing the human capital is the safest way to protect employees, because bad things happen to good people, and we are kind of a ground zero here for somebody who has a gripe on whatever level. And I'm surprised that more so than telework, that COOP has not been taken quite as seriously as I would think it should have been.
In my view, every federal contractor and every federal agency and every federal department should have a robust continuity of operations plan, test it, report on it, make sure that employees are very aware of it. Given what we've been through already, it is unconscionable not to do that. I worked for the private sector until the day before I was sworn in for this job 3 years ago. And my employer, I was very active in the emergency preparedness plan. They took it very seriously because the federal government was a big client. And we had to answer the question to the client, well, in the event that we can't get to the place of employment, what is our plan? The federal government needs to have the same burden put on it. What is the plan? In case for many days or weeks, we can't get to the actual agency for whatever reason. This area in the last 10 years is living proof of why you need a continuity of operations plan. Terrorist attacks and a lot of man-made, a lot of natural disasters that have, for some period of time, precluded ability to get to work or to get home from work.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. We're on the same page. Okay. I wanted to talk a bit about cutbacks. And we sense that 2012 is going to be more austere than the current year.
You think?
I think definitely, and I'm putting it nicely. That federal agencies will be charged with doing the same with less cash, maybe more with less cash. And in that, Vivek's original data center consolidation targets have been, aggressively ramped up by the new federal CIO, Stephen Van Robeck. And I think that's great. Less is probably more in terms of data centers. They're easier to manage, they're easier to secure, and it reduces cost overruns. So data centers are going to make a saving. The moving of non-time critical services into the cloud obviously going to have savings, and I wonder where else are these savings going to come from? I'm reading all the 1105 publications trying to get. That's Ann Armstrong somewhere in the dark. I've just earned my bottle of scotch there. And try to work out where government is going to make these savings, because moving to the cloud has some cost associated to it. Reducing data centers has a cost associated to it.
Well, let me just say, I think a lot of our public debate and obsession with the debt reveals a sense of knowing the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Not all spending is the same. Federal investments, much disparaged, nonetheless, many of them have led to extraordinary returns. The entire technology industry would not exist today but for initial federal investments. Internet, GPS technology, you name it, those are all originally defense-related federal investments. If you look at science and medicine, without federal investments, frankly, a lot of the private sector drug development would not be occurring because they rely on the federal government to take the initial risk. And the payoff for our R&D investments has been extraordinary. Let me use a non-scientific example. 60 years ago, a Republican president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, had the vision to invest in the interstate highway system. By the way, he also used a defense national security rationale. And the legislation was born in the Senate by a Republican senator named Prescott Bush of Connecticut. Now, what's been the return on that investment, do you think? Can anyone even calculate it in terms of the enormous benefit to this country? So while we absolutely have to get our fiscal house in order, it is a huge mistake to disinvest in R&D, in technology, in innovation, and in infrastructure, because we're going to get our clocks clean by the Chinese if we do that. So we can and must do both. And I just fear that in the discussion that has dominated public debate in this town since last November, we've kind of lost sight of the need to make strategic investments for the sake of the competitiveness of the country.
Beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I agree. Yeah, that's worth a hand clap, actually. Yeah. You're a man after my own heart. The Intel as a company have always, when things get tough, we invest heavier. And a lot of other companies do the exact opposite. They start shedding everything, and we're like, no. We're in this for the long haul.
That's right.
So thank you. Okay, we have a few minutes left. So the final subject is security. Security is pretty much top of mind with any conversation I have with any federal IT person, because the threats. There are so many threats now, it's difficult to know which way to face the threat. Is it US-based, a hacking conglomerate of people who decide they hate you on a Monday and so they target you, but you've never even heard of them before Monday? Is it organized crime? Is it a foreign government, et cetera, et cetera? And so security being top of mind, I read over the weekend that the Reaper drones now have they've discovered keylogging software in them, which they're trying to eradicate. So everywhere you go, somebody is trying to get at the data. And I asked the question, and this is my final question, do you think we're doing enough?
No.
No. What could we do more, sir?
Well, in government, we often measure that which is easiest to measure. So for example, in FISMA, compliance, a lot of federal agencies measure education and awareness training. Well, What we're after is the nature of the threat itself. How many cybersecurity attacks have there been? How many have been successful? What have we developed by way of countermeasures to deter the threat and stop it? And that's what we ought to be focusing on. I'm all for education and training and awareness, but it's ultimately efficacy we need to be worried about. I think, there's a recent GAO report, the Government Accounting Office report on FISMA compliance that is pretty gloomy in terms of the geometric increase in the number of attacks and, frankly, the failure of so many federal agencies to even begin to develop countermeasures to deter them. I think that is cybersecurity is going to be a growth industry in the future. If your company is involved, definitely stay involved. And secondly, I think it's one of the biggest challenges the federal government faces, the public sector faces moving forward.
Okay, very succinct. 10 seconds left. Final question. What could government do, what could industry do, the likes of Intel and HP, to help serve the federal government better? Anything elevator pitchy?
Well, I think the partnership between the private sector and the public sector needs to go forward. I think it needs to be expanded. I think the government should take advantage of capabilities in cloud computing. Mm-hmm. I think the government can partner in terms of innovation. And I think this last subject we talked about, cybersecurity, frankly, the private sector is doing a much better job at sort of pioneering new techniques and countermeasures than is the public sector, and we can learn a lot in that partnership.
Wonderful. I appreciate your time this morning.
My great pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you.
Before you escape, Congressman, give us a sense. So you passed a continuing resolution that takes us through November 18th or something like that. What's the chance that agencies will actually see full year spending at that point in time?
I would say fairly remote. I think it's very unlikely that this Congress is going to be able to pass 12 appropriations bills in anything like the requisite time frame. And I think, therefore, because there's so much uncertainty with the super committee, that people are even going to know exactly what their budgets are. I worry about that, especially in the area we're talking about, because it has a chilling effect on the willingness of contract officers to, in fact, go ahead and award contracts, because they're worried about the future. So, just on a political note, I'm totally nonpartisan in all of my views. But the other side ran a campaign last year on the dangers of uncertainty. And yet here they are creating incredible uncertainty with respect to tax policy, fiscal policy, monetary policy, and I don't think it serves the country very well at all. I think we need clarity, and I think we need to come together for the sake of the country and put aside partisan politics and solve this problem, and it is eminently solvable.